Welcome to Constant Variables, a podcast where we take a non-technical look at building and growing digital products. I'm Tim Bornholt. Let's get nerdy. A quick note before we get into this week's episode, we at the Jed Mahonis Group have a lot of fun projects coming in the door, and as a result, we're looking to expand our team by bringing on some iOS and Android developers. We place an emphasis on hiring for fit as opposed to skills. Skills are something that we can teach and foster through mentorship and just experience. Fit, on the other hand, it's harder to define, but we've outlined some of the traits we're looking for on our careers page at jmg.mn/careers. So whether you have 1 year of experience or 20 years of experience, if you're interested in talking with us, please reach out at careers@jmg.mn. We'll put that email address and a link to the careers page in our show notes as well. Today we're chatting with JC Granger, CEO of Infinity Marketing Group, a digital marketing firm that specializes in driving new revenue for B2B tech companies. JC is also the host of the Future of BizTech podcast, and he has gleaned a lot of insights from his interviews with leaders of software companies. So, without further ado, here is my interview with JC Granger. JC, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've got our throats cleared. We're all ready to roll here. Why don't you give me a little bit of background about yourself and about Infinity Marketing Group?
Oh, geez. I don't know how far back you want me to go. Are we going like to the womb, or are we going more like when I started the company? You know,
as far back as you think is contextually relevant.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've been doing digital marketing for about 21 years. I think it's maybe existed for 24. So if that ages me any, there's that. I started my agency a little over 10 years ago. And I'm just that geek from the Bay Area, right? I was that kid, in my dad's basement hacking AOL when I was 12, right? Which wasn't that challenging, it turns out. It was a terrible system. But so, I really got into software, I loved all that stuff. And, once I got into marketing, my agency, we specialize in B2B software companies, so I kind of just went with my passion when it came to who we wanted to help out. So, I've got a 15-year-old daughter, almost 16, which is, crazy to me. And, I'm almost 40 myself, so I guess that is the actual age instead of aging me. But yeah, I live in Denver, Colorado right now, and got a pretty awesome expert team. And, we really just like to help out software companies. And, that's our jam. Me personally, I'm more of an email marketing guy. That's kind of where I've always been. And, they said email was going to die like 10 years ago. I'm like, it's not going anywhere. Like, and it's still not. Like, it's still like the number one thing for B2B, period, right? All roads still lead back to email at some point. So that's my personal expertise as well.
You mentioned hacking around on AOL. So I got to ask, what were some of your top screen names that you had back in the day?
Oh, man. So I don't know if you're coming from a point of, did you do any of this? Like, did you remember these softwares that we used to...
Maybe
I remember I was using this.
I'll neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, I could tell you might know what I'm talking about here. There was this one called Pepsi I really liked, right? So for anyone listening, back in the mid 90s when AOL had come out, you had chat rooms, right? You had like AOL Instant Messenger like built in and whatnot, and so this is like the first time you could pirate stuff. I remember one time I pirated the American Pie movie a year before it came out. It was so pirated that at the bottom of the screen it said property of Universal. and at the end it said roll credits here. And I was like, wow, that's really pirated. We used to do stuff like where we would, listen, we were kids, and it was the internet age, and just coming out, and we had software that we could post as someone else, or like if we didn't like someone, we could we call it aim bombing. I don't know if you remember this, where like you could send 1,000 instant messages like instantaneously, and it would just shut their computer off. Like, it was bad. Right? Like, I don't condone this, by the way. I was 12. Okay, like, give me a break. I don't condone this. So nobody should do these types of things anymore. But that's the kind of era that we were in. We were just figuring stuff out, and then we figured out how to break into chat rooms in between chat rooms. Like, they didn't really exist. It was like we could modify AOL's chat room system so that we create our own, and then people just upload files. It was potluck, man. Like, this was not like right now. If you want to go download something illegally, you can do it. You can search for the title, and you'll get that one thing, right? And it'll even show what the ratings are. How many people have downloaded that thing? Is it really that thing? You can virus check it if you want to. It's actually pretty safe if that's what you wanted to do. I don't see the point. Everything's streaming on, for $9 a month, you can have all the content in the world on Netflix. But the point being is you could still do it. Back then, people just upload files. And it's zip files. You just download the whole thing and just see what you got. Like, it was completely random. Like, how chaotic is that? Like, that's insane if you think about it. Right?
Especially back on our parents' 56K or 28.8 modems. It's like you basically have to get home from school, start the download. Hopefully no one calls you in the 3 hours it takes to download the 10 megabyte zip file with like 6 horribly compressed MP3s in it. And then it's really like potpourri of like, well, I got one of the 10 things. And then you had to have the challenge of you have a 1 gigabyte hard drive. So how do you store and choose? Yeah. Like you have to choose which of these horribly encoded songs you're going to hold on to. I know nothing about this, by the way. This is all pure conjecture.
Yeah, no, of course not. You read about it online somewhere.
Oh yeah. I didn't live it every day for my whole childhood, leading me to this moment. But it's I love that establishing that nerd cred early on, because it is funny. Like these days. You can, like, there's really no point to piracy, like, but it was back in that day that was still, you had all of these record studios and movie labels that did not see the appeal of digital and did the best they could to keep everything off of that, because they wanted to sell physical copies of stuff. And people were like, no, and to boot, CDs. Okay, so back in the day, we used to have these things called albums, and it was 14 songs, one of which you wanted, the other 13 were crap, and you had to buy the entire CD in order to get the one song that you wanted. And this was every artist, right? Where nowadays, like, if you go on, you can just find the one song that you wanted off that album, put it on a playlist, and you're done.
Kids have no idea, like the struggle that we went through. But you know what they also don't know, though? Here's the best part. Like, so my daughter, of course, when she grew up with an iPhone in her hand, right? Not, she couldn't call anyone, but, we used to put educational apps and stuff on it and whatnot. But, they grew up with internet in hand. When I can tell you're probably roughly around my same age, since we have these similar stories. We didn't. There was a point where one day we were using pager code, right? We had pagers and we had pager code to text our friends. That's how you texted your friends. It was like a little code for them to call you back, but you knew what they were going to say. And then one day we had the internet, and we're almost teenagers. And then out of nowhere, we could just get online and do stuff. So it was this gold rush of like, holy crap, what is this? And we were old enough to do something with it. Like, we were old enough to be curious and to go dive in. And I remember the addiction level. I mean, it was like they basically gave internet intravenously, right? Like, like it wasn't a needle, and that's AOL just had branded needles. You just throw it in your arm because it was so addicting. I remember one point, my dad literally took the computer from downstairs and put it in his master bedroom, right? Because basically it was like I had to rent time. It was like, listen, you want to be on this thing now? Then he could control it. Say, okay, you can go upstairs in my room, you can get on the internet, right? So one time I was so addicted to this that one time him and my stepmom were asleep. They were asleep in bed. It was like 2 a.m. I literally snuck into their room. The computer is, I am not kidding you, it is 3 feet from their bed. I took a pillow with me. It looked like I was going in to smother them, and I wasn't. What I was doing was I went in there to put the pillow on the back of the computer, because when you dial in, what's that crazy noise? Yep. Like dialing in on a phone line, basically, right? The 56K. And I would smother the sound of this. I turned the screen brightness all the way down. I'm sitting there 3 feet from sleeping parents on the internet. Like, that's kids will never understand what it was like to be introduced to it later in life, like as a preteen. It's insane.
I think what's so ironic about that story is I go back to my parents' house, and I drop my kids off and they watch them sometimes. And when I pop in and just do an unexpected pop in, both of them have clearly not moved from their like chairs for hours sitting on Facebook or doing whatever. And it's like, I don't understand how we've gone from this like weird switch of like, our parents would constantly tell us like, don't trust people on the internet. Whatever you read on the internet is not true. Wikipedia, that can't be a real thing because it's not like fact checkable. And now you've got like entire political institutions are being brought down because those same people that were giving us that advice are spreading memes and disinformation and can't tell the difference. How do you square that in your head? Like how do you make it so like these people, like the same people that were teaching us like don't put a credit card in on the internet because someone is going to steal your identity, now like willingly fill out Facebook surveys and give away all of their privacy. It's so maddening.
Yeah, just like most of history, we trade privacy for convenience, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of always the way it's been, and you can go as far back as you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the technology is. Privacy versus convenience has always been a thing, in human nature. And listen, I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of them because I get people who want to be super private, and you should. There's a lot of data that should not be out there. I also consider myself a realist by now. And this happened a long time ago before I ever thought about privacy. My information was gone so long ago, right? Like I can't get that back. And with our systems the way they are, there are things that are just public record anyway. Like, your cell phone is out there because it's pretty much the only number you have. So it's kind of like you used to have the white pages where people could look up your home line. And then when you got cell phones, well, that was a private number. Well, now no one has a private or a home line. So now it's actually a lot easier. Just you can go on and Google someone and get their cell phone number because that's the only number attached to them, right? So it's very public in that sense. My Facebook, I trade, I'm sure whatever privacy and stats I'm giving away to Facebook, I trade because I live in Colorado and a lot of my family is spread around, the U.S., Louisiana, Connecticut, Maui, Hawaii, so that's how they keep up with me, and what I'm doing in my life. So I understand, the privacy stuff and data, but I got to tell you, I think my stuff has been out there for so long that now I'm like, you know what? If it's already out there, just give me the convenience. Okay. Just give it to me so I can like live just an easier life. Like if you're going to cap it, fine, keep it. Just give me the fun stuff.
And I think that's fair if you are someone that's been a technologist since they were smothering dial-up modem sounds, as a youth. But for our parents who weren't and don't understand these privacy trade-offs, like it's so frustrating as a technologist seeing people make these trade-offs that they don't know about and don't have the choice. Where like, most people that I know that continue to post on Facebook and share those memes, they would probably classify themselves as libertarian, and they would, from like a political standpoint, again, would probably view this as an invasion of privacy, but they don't even know about it. And it's like, it's comforting, I guess, to me to see that people, I guess, in 2021 are starting to become aware of this. And there have been like, antitrust and other things like regulations coming down because it's like this stuff has just dropped in our laps. You mentioned like you were at the precipice of digital marketing because this is so young and so fresh in the history of like human evolution. Right. And I think this is just something I've been grappling with for the last few months of just like, how do you reconcile, how can humans who have not been evolved to have this type of change all of a sudden have to have this, like, you need to evolve and stay with the times. And if you don't, like, you are going to be seriously left behind.
Well, I think the danger here's where I will say where the privacy thing becomes a real problem. Okay, I say more in jest, like, hey, you already have it, keep it, just give me the fun stuff. But on a bigger scale, here's where the issue is. When you have Cambridge Analytica, for example, right?
Yeah,
where people realized that they had thousands of data points per person, right? I can't think of thousands of traits I have on my own. I know 5 things about myself, okay? Cambridge Analytica probably knew more about me than I will ever truly understand about myself. And that is a real statement of fact, right? That's the thing. See, my degree is in psychology. So I understand how, human nature works. I understand how, self-awareness works and personality traits. And the amount of data they had, where the danger becomes is when a company has so much data that they're not just responding to the market, that they're actually starting to move it. And that's where it becomes a problem. And this is what happened. And so where I will say that I have a huge issue with data privacy is when too many data points are shared, especially among these big data companies, and they start, collating all this data about you. When you can put it, especially with AI coming out, AI has the ability to take all these data points and not just say, okay, JC watched this show so let's show him this ad. That I appreciate. I don't want to see diaper ads if I don't have a toddler or a baby, right? I don't need to see that. I don't need to see Ferrari ads if I can't afford a Ferrari, right? So I like having my ads tailored to me. I do, and I'm a marketer, so I can appreciate that. Here's what I don't like. I don't like the idea of them knowing so much about me that they can create a systematic flow of information that is tailored to push my mind into a different arena. And especially when it comes to politics, that's where it becomes dangerous. It's one thing to say, hey, let's make him want to like Toyota more than Mitsubishi, right? Fine, whatever. Okay. Great cars, sure. All right, make me a Toyota guy then, all right? Or make me a GMC guy versus Ford. Okay, whatever. But when you have that much data on someone and you can start pushing their mind, because by the way, our minds are very pushable. They are. If you have the right set of information in the right order and you're hitting the right psychological key points, you can absolutely manipulate someone over time to view things in a certain way. And that's where the Cambridge Analytica became a problem, because they picked a side and then they push people to that side. They can literally push world politics and geopolitical issues. You can start wars that way. It's crazy. So that's where I have to start coming back and saying, okay, that's too much, right? You want to show me cool ads that I like? Great. You want to start pushing my mind towards the left or towards the right? That's when it becomes a legitimate problem. And we really do have to be careful about that, because when you combine data point technology with artificial intelligence, it can literally come up with the perfect formula to push anyone in any direction they want. And that is absolutely a problem.
Absolutely. And I think it's I guess I'm trying to figure out what would you like, how do we solve this problem? Like, is this like legislative? Is this like society? Do we like, because it feels like you can't shame anyone anymore. Like that kind of, that social tool has kind of flown out the window. So like, how do we, like, does it start with awareness and just telling people that this is what's going on? Or like, I don't know what, like, do you have any answers?
So here, I'm going to give you the really, really crappy answer. The crappy answer is we've already passed the point of recovery. And what we have to do now is hope that the right people are in a position to have this information. Chopping it up legislatively, the simple answer is legislatively, yes, right? But see, legislatively assumes that the people who are making legislation have not already been pushed in this direction themselves. Remember, every day that goes by, people get a little older, which means that you have new, younger politicians coming in, but they are the victims of it also. So when the victim is the one making the policy, how the hell do you stop that, right? So, if this was something that we could have taken care of, 5, 6, 7 years ago, sure, we had a shot at it. Now, we might just get lucky. Honestly, we're going to have to depend on luck. Right now, as of today anyway, there's legislation. It's very bipartisan, which is interesting. About the few bipartisan things in America, chopping up some of the big tech has benefits for both sides, right? Republicans like it because if they can chop up big tech, their main complaint right now is that, they think that they're being censored, right? Democrats don't like big tech because they don't like monopolies, right? So, because it's more of a labor thing for them, historically, right? So, bipartisan, they actually are all on the same page as far as trying to, if they can anyway, try to split up Facebook, for example, and have their entities split up. So if you can split up this data and it's not shared in between itself, that helps. Okay, because Facebook, listen, to their credit, they understood this a long time ago. They said, well, okay, we know how people are acting on social media because we own Facebook and we were the big dogs in that. Okay, so we understand how they're doing in social media, but what are they doing when they're texting people? So they bought WhatsApp, right? They didn't understand how people were doing private one-to-one because people weren't usually using Facebook Messenger like they were using WhatsApp, right? That gave them an international pool. So there's a lot of data points there. They added those data points to their Facebook data points. And then all of a sudden Instagram came up, and that was the younger crowd. And it was more image-based, right? So it was like, well, what kind of things do people visually like, and how are they reacting, right? So then they grabbed, Instagram. Right, so now they have those data points. So I think the problem is not, for example, quote, Facebook as a platform. Facebook as a platform has a lot of data points, but it's still limited to certain, avenues. And I don't think that just Facebook alone would be dangerous enough. But when they start buying up all these other companies and adding those data points together, now they have so much information, and they have one giant platform and arms of different platforms that they can start pushing it out. and integrating it, that becomes a problem. So legislatively, if you can split up their ability to share the information across platforms, if legislatively they said, listen, you can own WhatsApp and you can own Instagram and you can own Facebook, but those data cannot be shared and cannot be collated at a top and then used to, make actions and send information and showcase certain things, right? You can keep those separate. And people say, well, how do you know they're doing it? Well, they actually really would. I mean, the fact is that the penalty is pretty large if you don't, because they can just essentially break you up completely if you're not following that. My point is that if you can split the data, then you have a better shot. It's when all the data comes together that it becomes very dangerous.
Yeah, and Facebook's a very easy target, but you can look at any big tech company that has all those, like Apple is, even though they're very privacy centric, certainly has access to all those points. And all it takes is a policy change internally. And I guess it'd be a pretty monumental culture shift, but still, it would just take the wrong person being in charge to all of a sudden say, hey, we can make way more money if we start like actually listening in on your Siri conversations or whatever. And you look at Amazon, you look at Google. Gosh, I don't know how Google was lower on that list than they were.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's just if you own the search engine and you know what everybody's searching for and you have access to where they're going and all of it, I think, like you alluded to earlier, humans are really bad at understanding large amounts of data and think that because I can't correlate, 12 different data points about myself to make a profile. Just because I can't do that as a human doesn't mean computers can't do that. In fact, computers are purpose built to do that. so like if I agree, I think that's a really great point of if you can separate this data and keep it siloed, then at the very least you're still getting to your point of being able to target somebody with a specific ad because it meets their interests. That makes a whole lot of sense. But as soon as you're using that data to move them in one direction or another, as you said, people can be persuaded very easily. And it's not instantly overnight. It's over the course of, say, how long has Facebook been around? 12 years, 15 years, something like that, 20 years, who knows? I guess that's a look-upable fact. But either way, they've been around long enough that they have so much data on you. And if you've been daily scrolling through the feeds, like they're doing stuff like as soon as you stop like the finger scroll and look at something, they note that. When you go back in to look up something, they note that. When you go in at certain times of day, they're noting that. They're making an exact print of you and figuring out how to do all that.
They know when you're going to break up with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, like, think about that for a second. I didn't say they know when you've broken up with your girlfriend. I'm telling you, they know when you're going to, right? Because we are creatures of habit. And we don't recognize our own habits, right? That's why we have therapists. Therapists can tell us our habits because they're looking from the outside in. They're asking a bunch of questions over time. They're like, hey, looks like you've got this pattern here. You're like, oh, wow, thanks for letting me know that. Now I get that. A computer, but Facebook knew that a long time ago. They understand because they've got literally billions with a capital B of users to watch human behavior over time. And they know that, hey, when these certain things start happening in this order, this is the most likely outcome. There's a reason why if anyone listening, this is where it gets creepy, right? If you start fighting with your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, or your husband, or your wife, they know when you're going to cheat, probably, right? The probability anyway. It's not like they're psychic, but they and all of a sudden you start getting ads for these cheating websites. Like, how about this? If you want to know what you're going to do, just look at the ads you start getting from Facebook, right? They already know. They figured it out before you did. They know when you're going to get a promotion. They know when you're going to make more money. They know when you are making more money just because of things you're looking at that cost more, your buying habits, the keywords you're using in chat on their stuff. It's not like there's someone standing there and looking at your profile. It's just mass metadata being put together, but it gets really creepy in that sense. And again, I'm okay with them understanding things about me and serving me up information and ads that are relevant. But if they know too much, it start pushing me in a direction. Now that's a problem because, for example, what if, they were going to make a lot of money? Let's say they had a certain price point on what was it? Ashley Madison? What was that website that the cheaters website? Yeah. Okay. So remember that Ashley Madison, everyone, it got hacked. Good. I'm happy about that. I'm not usually happy about hacks. That one was a good one. I was like, that was a win for for everybody. But point is, let's say they were getting a certain price point on that. Well, in the algorithm's best interest, if you haven't cheated yet, but you're showing signs of cheating, it's actually in the algorithm's best interest to serve you up things that'll make it easier for you to do so. Because if you sign up for Ashley Madison, right, they're making more money off that now, right? And so that's where it becomes dangerous. It's not, do they respond to what you're already doing? If you're already cheating, they're like, hey, listen, you're already cheating. Check out this website. You know what? Fair enough. Okay. But if they're like, hey, this person's about to cheat, check out this website, massive issue. That's where that tipping point becomes pushing versus responding. And, I have a really, really big issue with that. And that's where it becomes dangerous, which is why this data needs to be siloed and kept separate, right? You can't stop the flow of data. It's going to happen. We give it up voluntarily because we want to, because we want to share things and show things, and we want to see relevant ads, and we want to, get, promotions for cool vacations when we know our vacation time is coming up, or maybe just right after we got, a refund from the IRS or whatever. We want to see those things. We really do. But to push the market is so extremely dangerous because humans are in charge of that. And it just really, it's a roll of the dice of which human, right? Is this human someone who's ethical, or are they a person who wants to see the whole world burn down? Because they could absolutely make that happen with enough data being able to push out, a thought and an idea to people. And we've already seen this happen, right? Not to get too political, but I think it's pretty obvious which groups in America specifically have been very enabled and pushed in a certain direction. We are more polarized in our politics now than we ever have been. There's barely a middle to even be heard of. It's just far left, far right. And it's like, how do you think that happened? Right? Well, you think we just woke up one day and we all just changed our minds? Absolutely not. Our behavior didn't change. We got pushed in these directions, and then we held on to it, and now we're cemented in it.
Well, one thing I wanted to go back, because we're like already halfway through this interview. I haven't even asked you a single question on my list yet. which is awesome. But I can never get enough of talking with somebody about privacy, especially somebody like you who's in marketing and all of these tricks. And it's like, it's something where I throw something out, you throw something out. It's things that I think people need to be aware about. But one thing you had mentioned is being on Facebook, when you're voluntarily going through and telling Facebook, hey, I'm super into Space Jam. Hey, I'm super into swimming, whatever. When you're going in and making those markers in their platforms, great. But what a lot of people don't realize is different website owners will put trackers on their website for Facebook pixels. And so it's when you're signed in, Facebook is literally following you. And I'm not just, again, singling out Facebook. Google is also very pervasive in this with Google Analytics and with all the other systems that they have. They are following you around the internet. Every website you go to, every at least major website you go to is going to have this information on there because, first of all, Facebook will give that information back to whoever's hosting this platform in the form of, hey, here's what your users are seeing. But you cannot tell me that Facebook is not taking every single thing that you do around the internet and throwing it in your profile as additional data points. I'm not going to believe that for half a second. So there's one thing to be said about you voluntarily giving up that information as you're going about your business on Facebook. But what a lot of people don't realize is you're also giving up a lot of your information just visiting the news websites and information websites, just entertainment, all that stuff. Every single one of those websites, I guarantee you, has the Facebook tracker on it and is watching what you're doing, at a very least, not even maybe watching specifically what you're doing, but noting that you went to that and feeding that into their algorithms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I guess we should get to one of the questions here. Let's start with number one. 25 minutes in. Question number one. Here we go.
So this is what we in the biz call a smooth transition.
Yes.
Effortless.
Cue the violins.
So all this way in, we mentioned way back that you work with the company that you own is Infinity Marketing Group. Why do you focus just on tech companies? Is that because niches get riches, or is there another reason why you stick with just focusing on helping tech companies with their marketing?
Well, I'll tell you, the riches in the niches, that is a true saying. It really is. But I've never really been money focused when it comes to that. And I don't, like our company, we don't have revenue goals. I know that sounds really stupid to some people, but we believe that the money comes when you're passionate about what you do, you're great at it, and you get results for the client, right? So the money is the result, not the goal. The goal is to be remarkable for the client, right? It's to give them, everything they hoped and dreamed, right? And the money will come from that. So why tech? Well, again, like I said, at a certain point, most agencies start off as the accidental agency, right? Where, When I started, all we did, because I started to spend more time with my daughter. She was 4 years old at the time. And, I was making six figures at some, tax firm, as a marketing director. And, but I was working for it. I was missing a lot of, her life. And I said, screw this. And I just quit one day. Which I don't recommend just quitting your job one day, but like don't do what I did, by the way. Like that was very risky, but it was for me. It's how I am. And, and it paid off though. I was working like 20 hours a week for years, but I got to, be the only dad chaperone, like at the school field trips. I got to go to the school lunches where they allow parents to come and sit with their kids. Like it was awesome, right? I got to go to every gymnastics practice. Right. And not just the competitions, like the practices. I got to watch it like every time, for an hour. And it was just, it worked out. It was great. I got everything I wanted out of being an initial business owner. But the first thing that we did was all we did at the time was, you had these big websites and you had smartphones. The smartphones had advanced so fast that everyone was on their smartphone looking at websites, but none of the websites were mobile optimized. Right. So there was this like good 2-year period where everyone had to just keep zooming in to do anything on a website on their phone. So all we did was convert big sites to little sites, basically, right? So we would go to like a flowers.com type of site, right? We had like a flower company. They had 1,000 pages. And they're like, we want people to be able to order on the mobile, but it's so hard for them to do that. So all we did first was just mobile optimized big websites. But then we got really good at that. And they said, hey, can you make a regular website for us? We're like, yeah, sure. That's not too far off. So we would do that. And then they say, hey, that's really cool. Can you make this video or can you do social media? We're like, yeah, sure. So we just kept saying yes to everything. And we became the accidental agency, this full service agency who didn't specialize in anything for anyone. Right. And that's how it starts. But after over time, you kind of realize, all right, well, I don't like working with that industry that much, or it's just, it's boring to me. So I don't want to work with them. And I don't like providing this service because it's way too complicated, doesn't have a big ROI, and I'm just not passionate about it. So you start dialing in over time. If you make it to the point where I did in my agency, you eventually get down to offer specific services for specific companies. And when I made that pivot to B2B tech, it was because, again, I found myself nerding out in my mid-30s, at B2B software. I was obsessed with any software that could help speed up my processes internally or for clients, right? And so B2B software was all there was. And I just remember one day I just fallen down this software rabbit hole, right? I probably killed 4 hours of my workday just checking out all these really cool softwares that like automation tools. Like, this is so awesome. And I just dawned on me. I was like, these are the companies that I want to help because I'm so passionate about it. I do it on my own time. And I get it. I came from that industry. I grew up in San Jose, Mountain View, Palo Alto, right? That's where I grew up. That's where, I really got into the software stuff. So, we eventually started doing that. And then we really started I like lead gen. I like getting big wins for companies, right? So we really focused on like LinkedIn marketing and email marketing, right? Because those things are, direct result things for B2B lead gen. So really now, fast forwarding 10 years in my business, we specialize in B2B lead gen for software companies, right? Do we take on companies from other industries from referrals? Absolutely. I've got a roofing client, right? How random is that? Right? But they heard about us and we did a good job. So, they said, hey, can you do it for us? And we're like, yeah, sure, of course. So, our capabilities and our skills can apply to any industry. We just go after that B2B tech market because we really love it.
I really love the accidental agency phrase because that matches up very perfectly with how we started. So when we were just decide, hey, we want to build mobile apps, and then all of a sudden it was, hey, can you help us host them as well and build servers? It's like, we can do that. That's not too far off. And then, hey, can you help us market our apps? And yeah, I guess it's app adjacent, so I guess we can do that. And
we did apps. It was a nightmare. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again.
What do you mean you won't do apps? You're on an app developers podcast and you're telling me that you would never do mobile apps again. I have to hear this story and why you would never do mobile apps again.
Well, all right, so here's why. So when we started, we did apps, again, accidental agency. Someone's like, hey, can you do an app? And we're like, sure. So I ended up hiring like this team out of India, which in itself is not necessarily a bad move. It's just a really complicated one that if you don't know exactly how to hire an overseas team, especially out of India or whatnot, it can be a bad experience. And the team itself wasn't really that bad. It's just that the communication took forever. I didn't understand. Like, I wasn't a developer, right? Like, I knew enough code to hang myself with, and that was about it, right? But I also found that working with clients back then anyway was very hard. Like, we didn't have the right target demographic, right? Remember I said we just do apps for anyone. And so there was this one client who came to us who wanted an app for it was like a trucking company. And they wanted an app for an internal app for this stuff, right? And so it was really complicated. And I think where our issue was that we thought it was going to be, this type of issue as far as, how long is it going to take, how much work. And we grossly underestimated the client's or overestimated the client's expertise on even what they wanted, right? And how long it would take them to get things back to us or approve things. And we started getting these situations where the app process was just dragging on so long that we had a situation once where by the time the client finally was approving things and getting feedback back, from the time that we started versus the time that we were at that point, there had been massive changes already in the OS of whether it be iOS or Android, where we would literally have to go back and redo the beginning now. Like, the app was literally like, we produced this whole app, and it was 6 months later, we're still working on it, and now it's worthless because now we have to make it optimized for this new OS update. Otherwise, it's not going to work on these phones. And it was insane, and I mean, it was big money, but it was also these big peaks and valleys, so it was just so much stress. And I was like, you know what, if we're going to do apps, we have to be just an app company. And I didn't want to be an app company, right? I really liked marketing. I liked the residual aspect. I liked doing the monthly tasks and having predictable income as an agency, right? There's nothing predictable about app income. It's like website design. Like, you're either up or you're down, right? Like, you're big money in or you're doing the work, and that's that. And it was just all these peaks and valleys, and it was chaotic. And I just got so fed up with it. I was like, you know what? We're not doing apps anymore, and I'll refer people any day of the week, right? But we market apps. So the good news is, because we used to actually build apps and we are a marketing agency, we're actually good at marketing apps, right? So the good news is that if someone comes to us, with an app, we know the strategies and what to do, even to this day, right? Because again, we work with software companies, and software does fall under apps. Some software comes in app form. We just don't build apps anymore, because that part, I mean, hats off to you if you do it, because I cannot handle that. I'll market it, but I'm not building any of them anymore, ever again.
Well, you've got a new contact of someone you can turn to next time you've got that problem, because that's what I do all day, every day is deal with. And I was just chuckling as you were going down that list of, like, communication was an issue. A new OS comes out and screws up everything you just worked on. The part about overestimating clients' understanding of what they want is another one where it's like, oh my God, this guy's reading my mind. So yeah, I totally empathize with you on that. But so if someone comes to you with an app, you first of all, you can send them to me, but you would normally shy away from that. Where do you find tech companies, when they first come to you, need the most help when it comes to reaching their audience, promoting their services? Just generally, where do you find most companies are lacking in that department?
I got to tell you, it's the cold outreach. Listen, most software companies are actually really, really good at selling their their prospects once they have the prospect. They really are. I've met very few software companies that didn't have a really good website, right? That they didn't have a really good product. They always have good demos, all that stuff. So, once someone who gets there, if they have a need for that service, they're really good at being able to convert that person. Where I find that software companies struggle is, and they struggle with lead gen, right? They struggle with putting the right message in front of the right person at the right time. That's never heard of them before, right? They struggle with the people who've never heard of them, because it's a very competitive market. I don't care what software you have. The odds of you having a software so niche that you don't have any competitors right now is very low, right? Most people enter a market that's already can be very, very competitive. And, most software companies are born of software people, right? So let's think about this personality type here, right? I said I had an accidental agency. Well, you know what? A lot of software engineers become accidental software companies, right?
True.
Because because they were coding for some other company, and they come up with a cool idea that solves a problem. That's great, right? And they're like, all right, well, hey, we're gonna build this app. If we build it, they will come. Right? If we build this software as a service, they will come. And listen, again, their idea is brilliant, and their execution is great. And then they get there like, yay, okay, where is everyone? Like, no one showed up to the party. It's like, yeah, because here's the thing. I tell software companies, I'm like, listen, 80% of your equation of success after you've built the thing is marketing. Because where else is your overhead going? Right? I mean, you got your own salary, sure. You got some, customer service, now and then. If you have enough clients to even rationalize customer service at that point, that's beyond yourself. But really, after you built it, what is there? What server costs? Like, it's a really low yield, low overhead company model. If you think about it, you're not a warehouse company, right? You're not an e-commerce where you got to, house all this stuff and buy a bunch of product first and then sell it out and pay shipping costs. So you don't have all that, right? You're digital, which is your advantage. Your disadvantage is that, typically speaking, a lot of software companies are born from software engineers, which their mindset is more technical. It's not as creative. It's not as, conversing, right? I was that weird hybrid. I was the kid who could hack AOL, but I could also have a conversation. Like, it's kind of popular, not like in the weird, click sense, but just like, people like me. I was just fun. I could bounce around to different groups, That's not really normal for people who are hackers, right? I think we can all look at the cliche and say, yeah, that's pretty close, right? So I think the biggest issue that software companies have is that they're born of software engineers, which have a very specific mindset. And that mindset is fantastic when it comes to building the product and having the better service. It's not that great when it comes to talking about it, right? When it comes to getting out there. And so I realized that was a big need, right? And so because I understand both sides of that equation, I was like, well, we can help with that. And we do, right? So I bring in, my company brings in that part of a software company that they need that they don't have typically in their own tool set, because most of the things they've been working on is the product itself. And so we bring in the ability to say, hey, great product. Now here's what we have to say and who we have to say it to. Now, once we start bringing that flow of interested people, again, the software companies are really good at converting after that point. Typically, I don't usually find a whole lot of crazy things they're doing wrong. There's always ways to optimize, right? And we say, let's add a video here. Let's maybe, do a demo over there. Let's add some call to action links here. But those are minor things, right? They help with conversion. Overall, my client softwares are really, really great. Their websites look really, really good. They just don't know how to get anyone to that point where they're going to buy. So for us, the biggest thing that we've really found is that lead gen, that cold outreach to a very laser targeted market, providing that psychological ad copy, right, and sales copy to walk that prospect through and really hit on the points, their pain points, and how this software is their solution. And that's what we specialize in, right? We bring all the horses to water, and then the software company makes the horses drink, right? Our job is to bring them to the water.
I think, again, you made a ton of good points. I really, again, appreciated the most engineers become accidental entrepreneurs. And I think most engineers also tend to think very, well, let's say, how do I say this diplomatically? Most engineers think of themselves in a very high regard and think of any other businessy person, say a marketer or a salesperson or customer support as a second or third class citizen within an organization. And that's something that I've seen in my career time and time again, just tank companies, is when you really overestimate how great and powerful your engineering staff is, but you don't put an emphasis on the other people that are helping get people in the door and using your product. So I thought that was a really astute point. One question that I had for you around this whole concept is, we're struggling ourselves with cold calling and with doing that kind of outreach on the outfront. And I wonder, are there like universal tips, or like, is there, I mean, I'm sure you have a proven methodology for helping tease some of this stuff out, but like, what would be some of the first steps that you lead a company through when they are struggling with like messaging or getting your, just how do you like reach out to an organization? Cause from my standpoint, again, like running an app development company, I've always found it very weird to just go up and, like 3M's in our backyard, for example, just like knocking on the front door of 3M and being like, hey, you got any apps you need built? Like I don't think that's going to prove to be a very successful strategy. But that's what we do is we build custom software for people. And like you had said before, most people don't even know what they want when it comes to custom software. So like, what would be, just using me as a guinea pig, for example, or my company, like what would be like the first step that you would take to getting us to, look at the situation differently, I guess?
Yeah, well, the first one is there's two lanes to go into because there's two main services that I personally like a lot when it comes to B2B lead gen, right? I like LinkedIn outreach and I like email marketing outreach, okay? Now, which one do you fall into? You can do both, don't get me wrong, but if you had to pick the first one to start with, it's going to depend on your price point, right? How big is your win? If you are a company that's selling, like I said, for you, for example, let's say that the minimum app you even touch or software that you build, you're like, listen, we're not going to take a project for less than $100,000, right? And I've worked with companies that are like that, right? There was a company out of downtown Denver that I worked with, years ago, where that was their bottom line. They're like, we are the high-end app company. We only work with these, Fortune 1000 or Fortune 5000 companies who can afford, these big, infrastructure type of, apps and whatnot, right? So for them, for example, LinkedIn would be a better shot because in LinkedIn, you can build a relationship. It takes longer, right? But the amount of information you have on each individual person you're reaching out to is a lot. There's a lot of ways to customize it, right? And you have your own profile. They can see who you are as a human. You have a face, you have a history. They look at, so when you're trying to build, if you have a bigger win, if you have, if you're doing enterprise level sales, basically, for whatever your product or service is, I really recommend LinkedIn because those types of deals are done with relationship building, okay, over time. It helps you get on that phone call and, get those meetings. You're probably, a 6-month sales cycle minimum. Some people are 2-year sales cycles, depending how big this win is. I've worked with companies that do Microsoft Dynamics, implementation for Fortune 1000, right? These are $300,000 contracts. So, if it takes them, 6 months to a year to get one, that's fine for them. And they only need one, right? So from my point of view as a marketing agency, I got to tell you, the bar is set really low for me, right? Because if all the efforts I do in a whole year only get them one deal, they love us, right? Now I can get them way more than one deal. Like I can get them way more leads that'll give them way more than one deal. But LinkedIn is really a great spot because again, you can build those, relationships slowly and methodically, and they become deeper connections, right? And that's how you get those enterprise level deals. Now, let's say you're a software company, or maybe let's say we're going to keep using you for example. Actually, so you're an app company. Let's say you deal with small apps. Maybe you work with do little game apps or something for startup companies, right? And maybe it only would cost $15,000 or $20,000 or something, okay? And you have like a payment plan for it, whatever, okay? Well, then honestly, I think that email marketing would be better. And this also works really good for like SaaS companies. If your price point is like $50 a month or $100 a month, right? I think that taking the time to reach out to individuals and talk with them on LinkedIn could provide an upside down equation. I think you'd be spending too much on labor and the time that it would take a salesperson to close someone at $50 a month. If you're going to take that kind of time and be that very specific, you're probably going to have bigger wins if you're doing it. But email marketing can be great because you can either A, buy a really good list, or B, you can procure your own list. There's softwares out there. There's what's that one where I'm trying to remember. I just talked to someone about the most popular one where you have a subscription and you can export these emails every day. I'll remember the name later, but there's a really popular one where people use. Yeah, I was trying to remember if anyone remembers it.
There's probably like 5 marketers listening to this right now, just screaming at their
they're screaming it at me right now. I'm like, I just can't remember. Anyway, so there's plenty of softwares out there where you can subscribe and you can put in your target demographic and you can scrape these emails over time. So you can even build your own list or you can buy a list, right? Now even then though, you got to clean the list, right? So then you got to put it through something like we like bulk email checker. That's a really good one, right? And then you're going to be left with a certain amount of emails. Now, once you have your emails, then you say, okay, now what's your messaging, right? Before you start sending these emails, you got to decide, what are you going to say to them? So the good news is, though, that's more scalable, right? And everyone has email still, right? We need it for pretty much everything still. So I'd say if you have a lower price point, then you can go with something that's not as quite personalized as like a LinkedIn relationship building. So that's kind of where I look at it. I take those two different roads. And there's a lot of other services we offer. There's paid ads, there's SEO, there's content, there's social media, and that's great. But those are more like supporting acts, except for paid ads. Paid ads can actually be a very good direct result one. especially for SaaS companies. If you can really get a good ROI down, I would recommend, like, if you can get your cost per acquisition to $20 or even $100, but if it's a monthly service and you're getting 6 months out of them at $50 a month, you'll make that money back, right? So you just have to know your numbers really well. But typically speaking, the LinkedIn outreach is good for enterprise level stuff, for the bigger deals that take longer, and email is probably a little bit better for those lower price things where you can scale that market and get those immediate responses, and you can track the link clicks, and they can watch a demo, blah blah blah, things like that.
We've been really focusing on LinkedIn recently ourselves, and that's, I think, proven out to be the right place for us to be. But I do like that there's multiple different ways you can do this, and email being one of them, and one that's very underrated. I think, if we also have like an email list with our company, and we put people on it, and we send them, you don't send them junk, obviously. That would be the one-way ticket to Bandsville, but we definitely send tailored information once a month or so, and give people updates, and it's like another way to do it. But I do appreciate that there's a distinction between when you use LinkedIn and when you use email. Do you have any tips for companies that are looking to kind of break into a new market, or if they've got a new way that they want to position their product? Like, what are some tips that you have for those organizations trying to break into a new market?
Well, for one, I would definitely suggest email more than anything. And the reason being is because you're going to want to kind of pull the audience, so to speak. The great thing about email is it's scalable. Because everyone has an email, you can find emails, right? You can find them by demographics. You can find them by job titles. You can do all the filtering you want. And somebody can you can either procure your own email list manually, or someone can hand you one that matches that demographic target. Now, if you're breaking into a new market, there's a lot of things you're going to assume, right? And the keyword being assume, because you're going to think it's going to be one way, but then people's responses are going to tell you something different. And so let's say, for example, you were to build, a cold outreach campaign, which we do. We customize cold outreach campaigns for our clients. But if it's a new market, you don't know, and we don't know what's going to happen. We all are in the room. We're all educated people. We're using our best guesses, right, based on our experience. Right. Like I said, I've been doing email marketing 20 years, but I'm still technically guessing until I see the data. Right. My guess is better than most people's. That's all. Right. So when you're doing that, though, I recommend email because you can get a lot of outbound and get a lot of feedback at once. Right. Because you can ask a question in email like, hey, listen, we're thinking about going to this market. You're in that market. Can you tell me a little bit about, what are a couple of things that you've been dealing with, that are issues? Right? People don't mind answering quick questions on email, right? If you're engaging and you're not trying to sell them something right away, you'd be surprised how responsive people can be. If you're just honest and upfront and say, hey, listen, I'm with the software company. I'm not trying to pitch anything. In fact, I don't even have anything for you to buy right now. Say we're this is what we do right now, but we're looking to go in this market, and you match that demographic. I was just wondering, would you mind letting me know, what's your number one problem that you have with XYZ? It would just really help us figure out what we want to build, and you'd be surprised how many people will reply with a generally good answer to that, right? And sometimes those polls actually result in leads also, because they say, well, tell me else, what do you do? Like, oh, we do this. So like, oh, I actually could use that, or I have a friend who could use that. So when you go into that, a new market, you need to ask the market, right? You don't have to overthink it any more than that, right? You can do all this data and analytics all you want. You can do all this research and everything. At the end of the day, if you don't ask them, you're not going to know anything. Now, don't get me wrong. Asking people what they want is also not necessarily what they really want, right? It's kind of like what was that movie with Mel Gibson? What Women Want, right? Like there was all the things they would say, but then he would hear the narration in their head, and it was like completely different.
Oh yeah,
right. And that's not even a female thing. That's a human thing in general, right? There's what we think we want, and there's what we respond to, and those are two very different things sometimes. So I do say ask the market, but also take that with a grain of salt sometimes, because you need to add both. You need to see what the market is doing, but you also have to see what the market is saying. But neither one of those independently is the right answer. You have to combine those and then make, you let your intuition take it from there, right? So again, there's what people say they want, and then there's what they end up responding to instinctually or psychologically or by their needs, and things like that, right? So you have to have both sides of it. So I think the important thing is do your research, do the analytics, and that's great. Have that, right? Do your market research, but then ask the market. And when you combine those two, that should paint a better picture to give you an idea of what you should be building or providing and whatnot.
It always makes me think of that. I think every quote from the early 1900s is attributed to Henry Ford. I'm not sure, but there's like that old saying of like if Henry Ford would have asked people back before cars were invented what they wanted, they would have said faster horses or like stronger whips or whatever. Like that. It's very similar to that. You know, if you're actually building innovative project platforms and software. You have to listen to what the market wants, you know, to one degree, but the intuition part, like you were kind of alluding to, of how people actually respond to different things. And I think the easiest way to kind of assimilate the two together is just ask them what their problems are. Because if you can at least distill it down to what their problems are, then you can address those problems with a novel solution that they might otherwise not considered. So I do think that's a really great point that you made.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I had this prospect once. This was years ago, and I'll never forget it. We're jumping on the phone, and they're like, hey, we need social media management. And I said, okay, why? They said, well, you know, we're doing those things, so we need social media now. I said, no, you don't. Like, what do you mean we're not doing social media? I said, I'm not how this. I said, let me rephrase. I said, I'm not saying that social media wouldn't benefit you. I'm saying that's not what you need. What do you really need? Like, what do you really want? Like, we want someone to do we want someone to make our images, and we want someone to put the ads on them. We want to get on Facebook and Instagram. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's the vehicle, but what's the destination? Right? Like, what's the real goal here? And I'll never forget this particular call because it went way longer than it should have. This particular prospect could not, they had married these two together. They weren't able to separate, right? They were saying, no, we need social media. And it's like, no, you need more leads, right? And I wasn't telling them that we wouldn't do social media for them. What I was trying to get to is, what's the real end goal? You think that you need social media, but really what you really need is you need more. You're trying to build more revenue. Nobody just needs social media, right? Social media is a vehicle, you know, to the end destination. So I was trying to figure out what this person's end destination was, and they couldn't come off of it. And I just remember that, and they eventually did. Eventually, I made them understand that, listen, I'm not saying we won't provide social media for you. I'm not saying I won't quote you on it, but I'm trying to find out what your actual problem is, you know. And when we got to the end of the conversation, it turned out that, yeah, social media could have helped, but they really needed like email and paid ads, right? Because those were the things that were going to get them to their goal faster, right? Because it turned out that they were really short on their top of funnel, and they were starting to run out of runway, right? They had like an angel round or whatnot, and they thought, oh, social media is going to be our solution. It's like, no. You need more leads, because it turns out their sales numbers were good, actually, right? When they were getting leads, they were converting really well, but they were on a time crunch, right? And so there's different things. See, time is an issue too. If they said, hey, we got 2 years to figure this out, I'd say, let's do an SEO play, right? Because SEO takes like 9 months to really hit stride, but when it does, it's a freight train. It's impossible to stop in a way, right? Like, it just has that inertia, and you're getting all these leads coming in because you're ranking really high on these keywords that people are searching for. But if you don't have the time, you can't do the SEO play. If you need this tomorrow, paid ads and email, that's it. Those are your only two options, because they're both direct response, direct results in real time. People check their email every day. People click on ads every day. You know, in real time, you can watch it happen in the stats. So they thought they needed social media, but social media was just more of a supporting act. Now what it turned out was that we said, hey, okay, let's do some social media ads, not management. There's a big difference, right? We're not posting on your news feed because you don't already have a big following. If you had 10 million followers, yes, social media management could really help right now, but they didn't. So I'm like, well, we have to build that follower base, which means we need ads. We got to pay to play on this one, right? And email. So I guess my point is that I always remember that conversation, because a lot of people say this is what we need. This is our fix. Can you give us that fix? And it's like, no, that's not actually the answer to your problem, because you don't even have the right problem yet that you're talking about. You know, so I try to back people up, and I try to make them agnostic of what the solution is, and just tell me the problem, because I'm the person who can tell you what the solution is when it comes to digital marketing. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions, and those answers are going to point me into a direction that's going to be the most suited for you right now. It's not that you won't do all those other things later, but like, where do we focus now, right? So that's kind of how that plays out.
It kind of makes me think of like the metaphorical guru sitting on the top of a mountain and having somebody climb up to ask the question of a guru, and they get the answer, and it's just like, well, that's not what I want. This is what I want. And it's like, well, then why did you climb the mountain to ask the guru if you already knew the answer? You just wasted all that energy like calling or so to bring it to your point of like, you go to a marketing agency asking for that help, and then why would you fight back on them when they're asking questions about, all the other stuff? It's like, I'd rather listen to the expert who's been down that path for the last 20 years and can tell me, do I need social media or is there a better thing, and listen to my actual problem. And yeah, that's what it's interesting. Like, that's one thing I've learned becoming an accidental agency owner myself is you ask those early on. When I was like being a app developer, you would just get a project from somebody and say, yep, I'm on it. Like, you got it, boss. And just kind of go off and build the thing they want. Now as you gain more experience and you work on more apps, now I've worked on like 100 different apps, and you start to see the patterns and learn, what is the app actually solving for you? Is there an actual result that we can get you out of this, or do you just want an app because it looks cool? And that's kind of what struck me with that client that you were talking about, or prospect. It's like, you call because you want social marketing or social network marketing, but is that really what you want? Like, is that really going to actually advance the numbers on your business? And it's kind of funny. Like, sometimes you seek expert advice and then it doesn't fit with what your narrative in your mind is of what the answer is. And then you just kind of are pissed as for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And some people, they dig their heels in, others don't, others will be like, oh, okay, that's a good point, but not everyone's going to be a good fit for your agency too. As an agency owner, especially when you get to the point where you can start saying no, right? Where you can start turning away clients, listen, I get it. When you're first starting, you kind of have to say yes to everything, more or less just because you can't afford not to. Like, I get it. It's not optimal, but I get it. But once you get that turning point where you're like, okay, I could say no to some things, you need to start saying no as fast as you can. We put filters in our sales process to discourage companies from hiring us. Like, all right, here's the thing. I do my best to give every prospect every reason not to hire us. All right, let me tell you why. Because the way I see it, because I'm going to give them the reality, right? You get these salespeople they paint rainbows and unicorns. We guarantee this. Everything's going to be great. Oh my God, you just found the solution to all your problems. Okay. And of course, reality never plays out that way, right? Because there's just real things that happen that go wrong. My sales process goes something like this. Cue the thunderstorms, and cracking of lightning and all the dark paths, that follow in front of you. And I say, listen, something's going to go wrong. I don't know what it is. It's really going to suck. But I'm going to make it right. Like, we're going to figure it out. But there's no scenario. I've been doing this 20 years and have my agency for 10. There is no scenario where everything's going to go great and we're just going to flow through it. And you're going to get all these leads. And it's like, no, we're going to have demographic shifts. Someone's going to make a human error because we're human, right? I'll fix it. I'll make it right. You're going to mess up. I'll try to fix your mess up too. But here's all the things that are going to go wrong inherently. But here's the payoff, right? For when we finally get down that crappy, bumpy road, it is, I always tell people it's a trail of tears to the golden kingdom, right? There's no good story about how you made it to your first, your self-made millionaire or how you grew your company 1,000%. I have heard zero good stories of how it got there. It's just ouch, 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 crap, 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 yay. And so I make sure that I tell them, like, this is what you need to expect, right? The second thing I tell them, and this is just for my company, right? I'm not speaking for any other agency. I tell them, listen, we're not order takers. We're more like personal trainers, right? Like, except we're going to do the push-ups for you in a way. But, this is collaborative. We are not, if you say this is what you want, that's great. If you tell us what to do, okay. But if we believe that that's going to be a detriment to your end goal, which is why we ask about the goals, right? Like, if your real goal is more leads or better conversions, this, that, and the other, and the thing you ask us to do, we think is A, not going to work, or B, going to literally work against you, we're not going to do it. Let me be very clear. We will say no. All of our processes, nothing happens with my agency that both sides don't agree to. There is no, hey, I want you to do this and put this ad out. Nope. Not a chance. That ad sucks. Not putting it out. And I'm helping you. Like, I'm saving you from yourself, right? A lot of agencies, they're just going to do whatever the client wants. And the problem is the agency's not doing them any favors, right? It's like that parent who gives a kicking, screaming child in Walmart the cookie.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's going to do that again, isn't he? Like, that didn't solve your problem. You put a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound, okay? Like you got 10 seconds of relief because that kid got his way. And it's like, no. It's like, if you want the real long-term solution here, you're going to have to do some hard things. We're going to have to make some hard choices. We're going to have to say no to you. You're going to say no to us. Because I always tell them, listen, then we're never going to know more about their industry and their product than they are, right? But they're never going to know more about marketing than we do. So we have to work together, right? It's a marriage, right? Husband and wife. Right? You got to work together to solve these problems. And so we make sure that we're very clear about that up front. If you're looking for an agency to just check the boxes, we are not it ever. Right? But if you're looking for an agency that will kick back on you and not let you get in your own way, if you say, hey, this is what we want, we're always gonna take everything you say and say, okay, well, let's see how that fits into the goal and the process. And if we think that's gonna work, 100% we're gonna totally do it. But it's not a guarantee, right? I've absolutely told clients, not a chance I'm doing that. It's never going to happen. Like, I'd rather you cancel on us right now, because there is no way I'm putting my name on what you just said, right? And I'm not that blunt with them. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can be,
diplomatic,
diplomatic about it. Yeah, but we make it very clear up front before they even sign with us, right? That this is how that process goes. And I think that's just important for any company. You're doing apps. I think it's important for you to set the expectations. Like, listen, this is going to take however long I think it's going to take. Add 2 months, right? It's like construction, right? Like, if you think it's take 6 months, it's 8 minimum. And here's why. Just be upfront with them. And when you manage the expectations, for one, I think it builds a lot more trust, right? A lot of the feedback that I've gotten from clients is that everyone told them all the things to do. No one ever told them what not to do. Everyone told them how everything's going to go great. No one ever told them where things are going to go wrong. And I think that's where a lot of times our prospects become clients with us versus the other guy, because we just give them better managed expectations. And then now when those things happen, which inherently always will, they're okay with it. They're like, well, we talked about this. You did say something of this wasn't happening. So let's work it out. Let's figure it out and let's push through it. And that's a real relationship in B2B business. And that's kind of how we operate.
Yeah, you got to be, it's got to be a partnership. And we've learned that. We're almost been in business for 10 years now. And that's something that we've been really doing on our upfront, as well as telling people, I'm human and I've built many apps before, but I'm very fallible and I can't predict all the things that are going to come up. And like you said, I don't know your business as well as you do. So we're going to make mistakes because we make assumptions about your industry or whatever that we didn't account for up front, and we need to change those or whatever. And yeah, it reminds me, I've told this story on this podcast before, but there's an episode of Better Call Saul. I don't know if you've ever watched that show or not.
I love that. Love that show. Yeah. The spinoff from Breaking Bad. Yeah.
Yes. And there's a scene where one of the guys is trying to build a tunnel to funnel drugs back and forth across the border. And they like do these elaborate things to bring in like an expert tunnel builder and blindfold him, bring him in, and they interview the first guy and he's like, oh yeah, we can build that. That's no problem. This long, we'll get it done. Piece of cake. And so then they blindfold him, send him off on his way. They bring in a second guy and he comes in. He's like, this is garbage. You do it this way. This is what's going to happen. There's no way you can pull it off with this budget and this timeline. There's no way you can do it. And they blindfold him, send him off. Guess which person that they pick to hire to build the bomb shelter or the tunnel? Yeah. Obviously the second guy.
No way guy.
Right. And they instead say, okay, what is the right way? And they listen to them. And those are the clients that you want to find when you're in any organization, in whatever business you're running in. It's all about the partnerships. It's all about the people and finding ways to work together, and bridging your unique skills that you have. In your case, you're an expert marketer, but you're not an expert roofer. So you have to work with that client to figure out like, what are the things? And you can ask those questions that give you enough of an understanding that then they can push back and say, maybe I'd say it this way instead of that way. Or maybe, my demographic wouldn't care for that messaging or whatever. You work together and you overcome those problems to finally deliver some success. And that's at the end of the day, why you ask those goals is so you can have some sort of success metric you can push against to say, look, we got to this point. We did it. Hurrah.
Yeah. And, it's in our best interest for the long term. A lot of people think, they go in, they talk to a marketing agency and they're like, they have this suspicion, like, well, they just want to get my business right now. And it's like, I don't think most prospects understand that, agencies like mine, like we don't make much money off whatever the first thing that we that we do with you, right? We make money when you grow with us, right? When we, because, you start off on LinkedIn. Like, I don't make much money off one, LinkedIn marketing service, right? I make money when it's LinkedIn marketing and then you put your whole sales staff on it. So it's 10 accounts and then you do cold outbound email marketing, campaigns. And then those going really well. And you say, okay, now that we've got the leads coming in, we want to convert them better. So let's add on some authority building things so that our sales cycle can be shorter, right? And you do that with things like social media and content and retargeting ads, right? There's things that you can scale in volume, lead gen, but that doesn't help your conversion rate, right? The ads, the content, and the authority building helps convert people faster and shortens your sales cycle, whereas the lead gen can just get you more volume on it. So there's an order of operations that certain services fall under certain categories, right, of when you do that. So we make our real money when our client is actually closing those leads and making more money and then asking us, what else do you got? We say, glad you asked, right? And we say, okay, we got, and you open up the drapes, say, look here's all the new services we can do for you, right? So it's in our best interest that these initial services pan out. Period. We really are working hard. Sometimes we lose money up front a little bit because we put so much work and labor into the initial product, which we're not making much money on anyway, just to make sure that can take off, right? That initial inertia to get them off the ground. And then once they're flying in the air, like, okay, cool. Now things are easier. We've got the leads coming in. Now how do we convert those better, right? How do we get more of them? How do we dial in better? How do we shorten the sales cycle? What can we do from our side to help your side, right? And then eventually they're making more money, so they're giving us more money, for more things. So that's what really comes in. So we have a vested interest in their growth and their success.
Yeah, the old I give you $1, you give me $2 kind of a thing, and then it blows up from there.
Yeah.
JC, this was awesome. I'm really glad we took the time to chat today. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about Infinity Marketing Group?
Oh boy, I don't want anyone to get in touch with me. I'm too busy. No, I'm kidding.
Good.
So our main website is infinitymgroup.com. The M stands for marketing, so infinitymgroup.com. And then for me personally, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can just /JC Granger. You can look me up j.c.granger on LinkedIn. And if you want to reach out to me personally, you can email me at jc@infinitymgroup.com. And I'm pretty good at getting back on emails pretty fast and whatnot. And I've got a good staff that can help out with any kind of questions that are specific to the silos as well.
Right on. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was an awesome conversation.
I appreciate it, Tim. And I got to tell you, I do a lot of these podcasts. I have my own podcast, The Future of BizTech, by the way, for anyone listening. Mine's called The Future of BizTech. I interview B2B software CEOs and CMOs, just kind of talking about, what they do and their software and kind of the future of their industry and their company, which is pretty cool. So that's on all the things. Everybody wants to go check that out. But I got to tell you, of all the podcasts I've been on, I love this one the most so far because we got to spend the first 25 minutes talking about how we were hacking stuff in our pre-teens. And that is easily the coolest part of any podcast I've done. And I don't think you'll ever forget that the guy you interviewed who smothered a computer so his parents wouldn't wake up while he was online.
I think it's one of those things. People listen to podcasts and subscribe to podcasts because they can tell when the hosts themselves are having fun. And that, we can talk about marketing and everything all day, but it's like those stories that actually humanize everything and make it so it's like, okay, yeah, I think these guys know what they're talking about. So I had a whole line of questions to talk about podcasting, but I mean, we talked about so much other stuff anyway. So yes, please go check out the Future of BizTech podcast because I listened to a couple of episodes of it myself. It is a ton of great information for you if you're in that industry. And again, JC, thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thanks to JC Granger for joining me on the podcast today. You can learn more about Infinity Marketing Group at infinitymgroup.com. And you can hear the Future of BizTech podcast by searching for it in any old podcast player, maybe the one you're listening to this show on right now. Show notes for this episode can be found at constantvariables.co. You can get in touch with us by emailing hello@constantvariables.co. I'm Tim Bornhold on Twitter. The show is CV_podcast. Today's episode was produced by Jenny Karkowski and edited by the idyllic Jordan Doust. If you loved this episode and could spare a minute of your time, we'd love it if you left us a review on the Apple Podcasts app. Just head to constantvariables.co/review and we'll get you to the right place. This episode was brought to you by the Jed Mahonis Group. If you're looking for a technical team who can help make sense of mobile software development, give us a shout at jmg.mn.